to the land. We were doing a lot of camping out in the national forests, and started having a little garden at her parents' house, and thought, well, you know, this is something we want to do. We want to get back to nature. And as you know, we bought a VW van. We drove all the way around the country early on, and then as we were coming back to Kentucky, we thought, well, I guess we're just going to need to settle down and buy some land. And we realized that, you know, a lot of what happens to people is they buy these little country homesteads, and they're all by themselves. And, you know, you make friends with the neighbors, but it's not like having people your own age.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe there's somebody on a couple mountaintops over that's doing the same thing as you, and you see them once a year or something. And so we had heard about the farm, and it was just down the road, really, because we're up in Kentucky. It was down in Tennessee, and we said, well, let's go take a look and see what this is like. And as soon as we entered the gate, we said, this is it.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah. Charlotte, while Charlotte's coming in, I'm going to interrupt us just a minute. It did that thing again where it said it needed to renew. So I tried to do that, and I'm not on Facebook. We're everywhere but there.
Let's scoot you over.
Okay, I'm scooting over. She's going to scoot me over. She's got to fix that while we're talking.
Good deal.
Well, that's, I'm going to move this mic a little bit. Well, I don't know if we've ever specifically talked about how you decided to come to the farm. And so you weren't there with the original bunch of the farm.
No, we came a couple years later. The buses landed in 71, and we came in 73, which
pretty close.
It's kind of like the second wave.
Yeah, second wave of this. I remember Lonnie Box and I were talking about the farm and when it actually developed here. And I said I thought it was around 1970, but 71 when it actually officially kind of got its feet on the ground there.
Right.
Do you remember how? Of course, there's some historical stuff here, but they came, I guess, by the bus loads from out in California area.
Right, and you know, Phil was on the original buses, so he'll be a good one to tell you because he was the one who found the land that we're on.
Right, and he's the Phil Schweitzer. He's talking about this. Going to be coming in a couple of weeks back.
Right.
Back with you. Just some interesting stories. Of course, it was a different time then. You know, times were different then, and the so-called hippie movement was big. And of course, that's for us here in this neck of the woods. When the hippies landed, it was like a big deal.
Yeah, of course, you know, being from the South, we realized there were hippies here. Hiding out in the woods, and we had friends and relatives in Alabama that were kind of flirting with the hippie thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that was part of what worked for us, as we were already from the South.
Yeah.
It wasn't we weren't afraid. You know, a lot of people watched Easy Rider.
Yes.
And they were like, you moving where? You know, but we knew it would be all right.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't, and of course the mentality or the hope behind the farm movement was based on peace and love and that kind of thing. And they struggled though for a while.
Well, it wasn't easy. I mean, we moved on this land. There was one house
and they struggled though
and a barn.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't easy. Nothing else. And so, you know, people pulled in the buses and just drove down to the end of these logging roads, and we had to build the place from scratch.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate. It was a time when the sons and daughters of the Tennesseans, the local people, were leaving the family farms and moving to the cities to work in the factories.
Yeah.
Here we were, a bunch of city kids moving to the country, and we wanted to know what they had to teach us.
Yeah.
And so they took us under their wing and showed us how to use a chainsaw and fix a tractor and work with horses. And we wouldn't be here without the neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. There was I guess a good community spirit that kind of developed around it there with some of the locals.
And that was part of the wisdom of Stephen Gaskin, was that if we didn't make friends with the neighbors, we would not survive.
Yeah.
And so we tried to be very open every weekend. We gave tours to people, could come in, and we'd show them all around the place.
Right.
We sold our vegetables to the folks. We built houses, helped people bring in their crops.
Yeah.
One of my first jobs, out bucking hay for a neighbor.
Yeah. Well, I know that there was just that kind of thing happening. But you yourself, you and your wife came on, and of course, how did you survive?
It wasn't that. It was so much fun, really.
Okay.
That we didn't even think about survival. We were just thinking about changing the world by showing people that you could live together. We were like
Right.
Woodstock, but not just for a weekend.
Yeah.
It was like, this is a life that a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
Of people working together for the betterment of all. We realized that we were the kids that had grown up in the middle class and had benefited from so much. What could we do to give back to the people that were less fortunate?
Yeah.
And so there was that kind of spirit as well.
Yeah. Well, I think you took it on in a big way, you and your wife, and lived the life there on the farm. And I want to talk about you and your work and specifically not just the farm stuff. We'll get the farm history more so when Phil gets here, and we'll talk about all that. But you as you worked and kind of developed your own skill sets and began to develop a business, those kind of things. So you mentioned it just earlier that you just took on this electronic world. And then you got into videography, wrote for magazines. Now tell us a little bit more detail about that, because there was that technology was developing during those years, and you were right at the cutting edge of it.
Well, one of the things that was unique about the farm is we didn't shy away from technology.
Yeah.
We looked at everything and saw, is it useful? Is it something that could be of assistance to us and other people? And so we started using, like I said, the amateur radio as communications. And, I was sort of a little guy, so I wasn't really built for carpentry.
Okay.
I kind of had, more of a technical flair, and I had discovered that I liked writing in high school and had put that on the shelf. But, so I got my ham radio license with the idea that maybe this would lead to some world travel, actually, because we were just starting to do our projects around the world. Yeah. And it was right after I got my license, I got picked to go to Guatemala, where there had been a big earthquake. And we had sent a team of people down there to help, and they were mostly carpenters. We built over 1,000 houses in one village, municipal buildings, schools, and but
So
we
when you
needed
say
to
that-
communicate back to the farm.
When you say that, you sent a team from the farm to Guatemala,
Right.
just in a humanitarian effort, I guess. How many folks actually went from the farm?
There was probably a few hundred that went over the course of the 4 years that we were there.
Okay.
The largest our camp was about 100 people down there.
Okay.
And
So
was
what was Guatemala like when you were down there at that time?
It was very undeveloped. We were living out in the mountains in the villages with the Indian people. And there was a town that you could walk to about 15 minutes away. It had one telephone.
Yeah.
But the main telephone, we had to drive a half hour to the next town where we could get on a phone to call home. And so that's why the amateur radio, the ham radio, was so important, because I could talk back to the farm in Tennessee every day.
Yeah.
And we actually heard about the earthquake when people were making distress calls on the ham radio, because all the communications in Guatemala had gotten knocked out. And there were people that had radios down there at some of the missions down there, and we heard them calling for help, and that's how the word spread on the farm about what was going on down there.
Oh, wow.
So we sent somebody down on a plane like the next day to see, what could we do to help. And what they found after a few days of being down there was that Canada had sent a ship with plywood, tin, and 2x4s, but nobody to do any building.
Okay.
And so we said, well, we can build. And so we sent a team of 5 guys down and connected up with the Canadian Embassy and got all the materials delivered to a spot. And we started teaching the local people how to use skill saws and hammers and nails.
Yeah.
And built a town.
Cool. That's pretty amazing.
And, and just one thing led to another. And as we were down there, we saw that the earthquake was just the beginning of what people needed. People needed clean water. People needed better nutrition. So we found that we could really make a difference in people's lives by going up into the mountains and finding a spring. And then you'd cover that spring with cement so that the groundwater wouldn't get into it and it would stay pure.
Yes.
And then you would gravity feed through water pipe down to the village below, and then build a holding tank for all that water to collect in, and then gravity feed from that holding tank so that everybody in the village got a spigot in their yard.
Yeah.
Instead of getting the water out of the creeks, they were getting clean water from the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's really makes a tremendous difference, as you can imagine, just in your health and the health of your children, to have clean water.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, that's a great story and a great effort. I'm curious, and this is, I don't know how to ask this question or not really, but the people there, you know, you say you helped them get the water, but the spring was already there. Why were they not already doing some of that kind of stuff? And that's been a curiosity to me.
Well, the spring was probably over a mile away.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple miles, up in a mountain.
Yeah.
And it was on some privately owned land, and we had to persuade the owner to donate the spring to the village.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, that much pipe cost money,
Yeah.
and people are basically living in abject poverty.
Yeah.
So they don't have the money to buy the pipeline,
Okay.
or the
That makes sense.
maybe the social cachet to get the landowner to turn over the water and donate it. So that was the ways we could help.
Yeah, and you did help. Very good. And that's just one of many that I've heard of and know of, that the efforts that were made by different groups of you guys from the farm.
The name of our relief organization is called Plenty, because we believe there's enough if you just share.
Yeah.
And this year it celebrates its 50th anniversary.
50 anniversaries. Wow. 50 years. And you've been there 50 years.
Right.
How did Plenty get started?
It was just an idea of, we're doing
Did that
pretty
develop
good.
on the farm, or was that outside of the farm?
No, developed on the farm.
Okay.
Said, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
Maybe if we create our own nonprofit, things will start to come our way. We'll figure out what to do. The first things we did were tornado disaster relief in northern Alabama. There was a tornado went through. We sent people down to help with the cleanup. And then a Mennonite organization contacted us to see if we could find some beans to send to another disaster area. And we started looking a little further, saying, well, maybe we could have something to do beyond just our local community.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, and then when we heard about this earthquake in Guatemala, it was kind of like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
And then when we, got down there, we just started sending more and more people down. It became very exciting to be involved in a project. And Guatemala, I could see 5 volcanoes from our home. And it was next to this, one of the largest mountain lakes in the world. It was just incredibly beautiful. And then to meet these Indian people still speaking Mayan Cachiquel, and they're so sweet and beautiful. We just felt privileged to be there.
Awesome. Well, I want to change gears on you just a little bit.
Go for it.
Very, very nice. And we'll get more into that maybe with Phil too. But I want to zero you back in on the video business, because you had a tremendous business and did a lot of video work, not just mine, but you did video work in a lot of places. What were some of the most interesting video projects maybe that you remember doing?
Well, probably one of the most interesting was when I went to Belarus.
Yes.
Which was, for me, it was going to Russia.
Yes, going to Russia.
And I'm showing up at the airport with bags of gear, and I was working for a businessman who actually had an outlet here in Lawrenceburg.
Okay.
But he was from Chicago.
Okay.
But we met through his local business.
Yeah.
And it was right after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And so this factory that made electronic components for Russian spy satellites was suddenly going private and looking for customers.
Okay.
And so they had contacted this businessman who was in the electronics business. And so he brought me over with a team to video the factory. And it was a factory that made IC chips and transistors and capacitors. And so I got to see how all that stuff is made. And I was the first Western photographer to ever go inside this factory.
Wow. So you did a lot of industrial video work, commercial videos that we did. Were there any other type of stuff?
Well, the first project that I made, the reason I got into it was I wanted to be into education, using video for education. And so I was interested in solar and in electric cars. So I found that there was a race that went for a few hundred miles through the Northeast, all electric cars.
Yeah.
And there were student groups and colleges that built them, elementary schools. And so Deborah and I went up and followed the race and videoed and interviewed people and created a video called the Solar Electric Car Primer. And this would have been back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it was a little ahead of its time. Didn't sell a whole lot of them, but it got me going.
You know, it just crossed my mind. I remember another project that you and I decided to do, and it involved my wife. Mm-hmm. Do you remember this?
Oh, the cake
The
project.
cake project. I never, it just crossed my mind. And Teresa may kill me for even bringing this up, but I thought about it just now. It just kind of crossed my mind. But at that time, Teresa was trying to make some extra money by making cakes. She made birthday cakes mainly for the public, did it at home, and she was developing a little home business, and she did quite well with it. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know. I guess it was you may have had the idea. I don't know. One of us had the idea of trying to develop a little training video on how to start your own cake business.
Right. You know,
Do you
I was
remember
seeing
that?
other people making these videos about some way to start a business. You know, you were selling VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And so we were looking for one that we could do that was something unique.
Yeah.
Maybe more mainstream than the solar electric car thing. Mm-hmm. And so we gave it a shot. You know, one of the things about being an entrepreneur is you've always got to be looking for the next thing.
That's right.
You know, and you have to plant a lot of seeds because you don't know which one's going to come up.
Yes.
You know, so that was one of the ones we tried. Again, didn't make a whole lot of money on that one, but you know,
give it a good shot.
It
though,
led
Jim.
to one thing leads to another.
Which begs the question: do you still have any of that available? As far as is that?
I'd have to look and see if I have the cake video. We probably do because we didn't throw. We keep an archive.
Oh my
I know
gosh.
I've definitely got a lot of our commercials on tape.
Do you really?
Yeah.
A lot of our commercials.
Mm-hmm.
I've wondered about getting some. I'd like to have some of those to keep. I don't even have any of them.
Yeah, our
have
greatest
none.
hits.
I have none of them. The greatest hits. We could Facebook some of those here and have some.
Jeff
fun
as the Godfather.
Yes. I remember the Godfather commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow! I forgot about that one. And one of the more famous ones we did, I say famous, locally famous
Right.
anyway, was the Big John spots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Big John spots? We used to have fun with those.
Mm-hmm.
I had Robert Morris in here not too long ago. We talked about that. But the cake video, I would love to have. It would really embarrass my wife if we found that.
We'll ask Phil about that. I think he's got
Good.
all that stuff
Does
now.
he? Good deal. Good deal. Well, it's not about us. I want to talk about you and more of your travels because you've traveled with the video work. You wrote for the magazine, which was, what was it, videographer?
Camcorder and computer
Camcorder,
video,
computer videos.
home satellite TV, digital photographer, over 1,000 published articles.
Yeah, you've got articles on all those published. You should write a book.
Well, I have one book. My first book was about video editing,
Yeah, that's right.
and then my other two books are about my life on the farm.
Yeah. Y'all had a recording studio too, didn't you?
Phil still has a recording studio down in his basement. I go over there periodically and
Yeah.
do some recording, and
Yeah.
he
deal.
keeps his fingers in it.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, you and your wife now, I see you on Facebook, and y'all are always like somewhere in a foreign country. Did you just go on a world tour?
Well, we just spent 5 months on the road. We went
This
from.
may take a while, so take us around the world right quick. So how did you start that deal?
Well, I'm involved in this practice where people get together and sing and dance, and they're, holding hands in a circle, real hippie thing.
Yeah.
But it's all about peace and love, right? But it calls on spiritual traditions from around the world, very uplifting. And so that's kind of been a little bit of a ticket to travel. So we went to Turkey and met with people over there from 25 different countries and had that experience. And then we were going to another one in Vietnam. It's now become active in Asia. But there was a little break, like almost a 2-month break between where we wanted to go in Turkey and where we wanted to go in Vietnam. We said, well, where else should we go? So we went to Nepal, spent 6 weeks in Nepal, went on a 4-day trek up in the Himalayas, Got up. We didn't go all the way to Everest. We just got up to 13,000 feet, but it was a 4-day hike through the mountains.
Oh, wow.
And it's it's not like you go up and you go down. It's like up, down, up, down, up, down. And
Yeah.
I think was in about the best shape I've ever been in at the end of that.
I bet so.
But in good shape and a bit wore out.
Well, you are in good shape, and people would be surprised to know that you're like 102. I think
I did turn 70
70 years old.
while I was in Nepal.
Wow, good for you, man. You look like you're about 40.
Where's some wood here?
You're doing good. You're doing very good. So tell me about this organization now. What's this about?
Dances of Universal Peace is what it's called, and it started in San Francisco the same time as the farm. This guy had the idea that if we could sing together and pray together and dance together, we could have world peace together.
Yeah.
And he started it in his basement, and now it's all over the world. And I've joined the board of directors for the organization, using some of my skills in community and my skills as a web technician. After video, I moved into doing websites, so I'm trying to help out that way. And so after Vietnam, we went from Turkey to Vietnam, then we went to New Zealand, did a couple
I want to stop you on New Zealand.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me about New Zealand.
Well, New Zealand is just gorgeous. Particularly the South Island. I had gone on another very interesting video job about 12 years ago to the North Island, where I videoed a $10 million wedding.
I remember that.
That was for the same guy who took me to Belarus, as a matter of fact.
I remember you telling me about that.
And so, but I'd never made it to the South Island, which is where all the glaciers are.
Okay.
And so we were looking, what should we do after Vietnam? Because after Vietnam, we were going to India. And again, we had another 2 months in between. And so we decided to go to New Zealand. And we rented a van and drove camping all around the South Island, climbing mountains, going up into the glaciers. We did a helicopter ride up to the top of the glaciers. And there's not that many people in the country, so it's just pure nature. We'd see these giant lakes, mountain lakes, not a boat on them.
Yeah.
So such a contrast to what we see around here. We're just, all the
New Zealand
speedboats.
has restricted its.
Well, they don't you can't just move there.
You can't move
You
to New
have
Zealand.
to get approved. In fact, we visited some friends that had managed to move there from the U.S., and the way he had to have a skill that they wanted.
Yeah.
And the skill was driving truck.
Really?
They needed truck drivers.
Really?
So he got his chauffeur's license and got a job driving truck before he even moved there from the U.S. He got a job, offered a job, and they found there, and they've been settled there for about 4 years now.
Really? What else do they need down there?
I couldn't tell you.
Because now I really don't know a lot about New Zealand other than you can't just drive there.
No, it was a long flight.
You can't get there from here.
Yeah, and one thing they're very careful about is their healthcare system. You have to meet their health standards to even get in.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, but we just really enjoyed it, and then we did met up with two dance groups in New Zealand.
Yeah. Now, just to back up on that, what about visiting a country like that? What's involved in? And I've not traveled outside the United States. I've traveled many places here, but not outside the United States. So I'm kind of ignorant on what it takes to visit another country.
Well, that's some of what we had to learn a little bit and during our travels. Some countries you can just arrive at the airport and say, I want to visit, and they give you a 3-month visa or however long. Others, you got to apply in advance.
Yeah.
And so with New Zealand, it wasn't real complicated, but we did have to apply for our visa before we got there. We couldn't just show up. With Vietnam, it took us about a week of going through visa applications.
Interesting.
India also took about a couple of weeks to get approved, and
India's a crowded place.
yeah, we were a little apprehensive about India.
I was going to say that you could show up there and they wouldn't know you were there.
So we decided to go with this dance group
Yeah.
You know, that way we had somebody that had already been there and they had the whole itinerary figured out, and we just had to show up and join them. And so what we did was we visited holy places.
Yeah.
And it was during a period of celebration for this one saint that had passed 100 years ago. And so it was there to honor his passing. And
Interesting. Well, is it always pretty much well received, or are there places you've been where they're not as welcoming?
I can't think of anywhere where we weren't welcomed, really. You know, people are just
Yeah.
the same everywhere. And that's one of the beauties of world travel, is just learning that we're all humans and we have families, and you love your family and you have your friends, and people are very generous and caring. And, you know, I think we were wondering what it would be like in Turkey, you know, mainly a Muslim country.
Yeah.
And the people are just so warm and friendly, and they just stop you on the street and want to talk to you and invite you to sit down and have tea. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think would benefit so many people, is to get outside the U.S. and experience other cultures and realize, you know, the center of the world does not revolve around us.
Yes, it does, Doug. Yes, it does.
There's these people that have these entire lives and existences that, you know, we're all experiencing the beauty of our time here in this time on the planet.
Yeah.
And to be kind to each other. That's what I keep thinking, is we just all need to be more kind to each other.
Well, I can tell you from my own personal experience of knowing you and Phil and the handful of folks that I've known from the farm, is they've always been just super nice. You know, there's a culture that you guys have developed to do that, which is whether you admit it or not, is a Christian culture. Mm-hmm. Do unto others.
That's right.
That's a concept. Some of us forget that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And you know, you find that people have a way of saying that from wherever they're from.
Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm. They do. They try that anyway.
Mm-hmm. We all try, and
we all try it.
We all make mistakes, but you know, you get up and you try again.
Yeah. Well, I told somebody one time, I said, you and Phil both, the friendship that we've had over the years. We were talking about this too. Guys that know each other like we've known each other, it may be months, sometimes even year may go by or more that you and I have talked or seen each other. But we'll pick up right where we left off.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Guys always seem to be able to do that, that are friends. And I have counted you guys friends from the beginning. And we developed a great friendship and gotten to know you and what you've done and the life that you lead. And there are attributes there that are admirable.
Well, we all share the same heart.
Love and kindness, you know, those kind of things that come from within.
That's it. Comes from within. You know, listen to that voice that comes from within your heart. That's what you follow.
Yeah. I happen to believe that's given to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's a gift.
Amen. Very good. Very good. So but you're sharing that around the world, and gosh, there needs to be more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Needs to be more of that.
Well, so we're planning in January. We're planning to go to the other tip. We're going to go down to Chile.
Now, where did you
America.
go from New Zealand? You went to where from New Zealand?
From New Zealand, we went to India, to New Delhi.
Oh, yeah, so India.
That was our last
so
stop.
that was a planned event with this group you're talking about.
Right.
So that was the last. Now, when you were in the Himalayas, you went to where? Where the mountains? You went to near Everest.
Yeah, you know, the Himalayas are vast.
Yes.
And so we were technically in the Annapurna circuit, which is a little, I don't know, I guess further north.
One of the Facebook posts I saw that you did, I think, you were with these people. They were in some kind of religious garb. Mm-hmm. And I didn't mean to be negative about that. They were just dressed in their religious.
Well, we met
apparel.
some Tibetan monks.
Tibetan monks. That's what I was trying to think of.
We were just hiking up in the mountains, going to one of our favorite overlooks, and we see these two monks off in the distance, and they're coming our way, and they were coming up to pray for world peace.
Really? So were you able to communicate with them?
One of them spoke very good English.
Really?
And he we asked if we could sit and meditate with them. And
Yeah.
so we spent an hour with them, and then he handed me his cell phone and said, "Would you video us?"
Really? So the monks have cell phones.
Yeah. And we're still Facebook friends.
How about that? Cool. I did remember seeing those pictures. And I remember telling Trace, I said, Doug is with some monks. How about that? We've enjoyed keeping up with you. You know, that's kind of fun. Very good.
It's interesting, because from old high school friends to my new local friends to, my farm friends all over the country and the world, definitely not everybody is as fortunate to do as much travel as we have, and we enjoy sharing.
Well, you're very resourceful in that, and have resource. If I wanted to contact somebody and didn't know how to contact them, you would be one of those guys I would contact and say, "How can we get in touch with this guy?" And you'd figure it out.
I had a guy the other day said, "I'm going up to a Sundance in Colorado. Do you know anything about these people?" I looked at their website. "Oh yeah, I met him back in 1978. We're good friends."
There you go. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Everything's connected.
You're all connected. Connected. That's something I want to kind of circle back to the farm life that you've lived. Now you and your wife there, and you ended up with you have children.
Yeah, we're celebrating my son's 50th birthday this weekend.
Let's talk about your family some.
Well, I want to give a big shout out to my wife. She's one of the farm midwives.
Yes.
Been to over 1,000 births. And,
oh my gosh, yeah.
It's one of those things. It's not just a skill; it's a calling.
You're right.
And it's just been, my blessing to be able to support her and her work and her vision. Fortunately for me, she has retired from catching babies on a regular basis, which is what allows us to travel.
Yes.
But she still teaches her midwifery skills, kind of trying to bring in the next wave of new midwives. Our daughter is training. She's a midwife assistant. She's not ready to take on the full responsibility.
Now, is she there on the farm too?
She lives on her own piece of land nearby.
Nearby, okay. Yeah, okay. And the son?
And my son, he lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and he works for Goodwill and a program training people and how to develop their job skills and employment. And, so he's kind of following in the footsteps of doing work that's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good deal. I remember meeting your son years ago when he was much, much younger. He said he was about to celebrate his 50th birthday.
Yeah, I can hardly believe it.
That's hard to believe. But of course, when we think of the farm, those of us who are of Southern heritage here, we think of the farm. The first thing that happens is we think of hippies. Now, the first thing that happens when you think of hippies is long hair. Okay. And now, so when I used to, and this used to happen to me when I would tell people that I'm working with the video guys are from the farm. They said, "What are they like?" What are they? They're always curious,
Sure.
that kind of thing. And I would tell folks, I said, "Well, look, you wouldn't know them from anybody else's walking across the street. They look just like us.
We're hippie incognito now.
They look just like us." But anyway, I remember your son, the first time I met him, he had extremely long hair. It was different long than long. But then the last time I remember seeing your son, he didn't have any hair at all.
That's right. They're in hippie denial.
So I was like, "Well, what happened, Doug?"
Well, how the kids always got to do the opposite of
They
what
got
the
to be
parents
the
do.
opposite of what your parents done. So
But it's on the outside. On the inside,
I think
we're very tight.
He just buzzed his hair off completely.
I think he's into efficiency, too. It's just a lot less to keep up with.
Yeah, I understand. Gosh, there's so many directions we could go as far as y'all had. So you raised your children there, and there's a school there. You had your own schooling.
Yeah, we still have our own school.
Still have the own school.
I guess I don't know what generation you would call this, but there's definitely a new crop of, I guess you'd call them the grandkids. And
how many folks are actually living on the farm now?
there's about 225 people.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the long hair and things, just to kind of give a little bit of history. So in 1983, that's when we changed from being a commune to what I call a collective. The land is still all held in common under a trust, but everybody's responsible for their own incomes.
Yes.
And taking care of their family. And
Yes.
then, but we take care of the land together. There's a massive amount of infrastructure that we all have to take care of together. And that's when things changed. Like you could cut your hair if you wanted to. On the old farm, nobody cut their hair. Nobody wore makeup or jewelry. Everyone ate the same. When we changed in 1983, it was like the only rule we have that we've really kept is nonviolence. There's no weapons allowed on the community. We don't even like it when people raise their voices at each other. We might have to sit and talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. We don't yell. We don't need. There's no need to yell. Yeah. But I'm sure there are disagreements.
Oh, sure. I mean, you live with people. It's a very small town.
Yeah, yeah. But that's interesting, and maybe we can talk about that when you guys come back again. But the transition that took place from the original concept of the farm, which was basically total commune.
Yeah, like the Book of Acts.
Yeah, and then, but in that sense, it's hard to make that work.
The rest of society is not quite aligned for that way of thinking that we just take care of everybody.
Yeah.
And, we finally got to a place where we just weren't making enough money and we were going into debt and we were going to lose the land if we didn't change.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that's remarkable is that we did change.
Yeah.
And we survived. We went from about 1,400 people down to 100 adults.
Yeah.
And 100,
wow.
150 kids. And that 100 adults stuck it out. And I was one of them. I had already seen that we needed to make money to
Yes.
survive. And so I had started a business before things changed.
Yeah.
And that's when I got into the satellite business.
Yeah.
So when it changed, I already had a business, so I could stay there.
Yeah.
I did not want to move back to suburbia or go back to my parents and say, well, it didn't work, please
Right.
help me out. They were always very helpful to me,
Yes.
throughout my life. But I still wanted to maintain my life in the country. I wanted my children to grow up in nature. I didn't want to move back into the city.
Sure.
And there was enough of us who also felt like that we were able to pay off all of our debts in 3 years. Somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
Yeah.
And get the land free and clear. And that's when we set it up, as a trust so that it could never be encumbered again.
Yeah.
And so, people just had to figure out how to make it out. At that point, there were no 4-lane highways to Lawrenceburg or Columbia. It was still
No.
little 2-lane roads
Yeah.
all the way out to 65.
Yeah. Different world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting.
But I was driven to make it.
Yeah.
And, some of my regrets are I wasn't maybe home as much as I wish, for my kids because I was driving to Nashville every day. But fortunately, because I had my own business, I could take time off and be with them and take them on school trips or
Right.
family vacations. We took them to Guatemala when they were 14 and 16, kind of
Yeah.
to see where they had been as children and rekindle that connection there.
Yeah.
And they both went back to Guatemala on their own after that.
Yeah.
And, my son went and lived in Ecuador and did teaching English down there. And so I followed him around a little bit now,
Oh, really? Well, good for you, man. That's pretty awesome. Now you're also, Doug, a very accomplished musician.
Well, I'm really a singer that plays guitar.
You singer and play guitar, and I think I'm going to ask you guys to maybe bring your instruments next time when you come. But you get to perform here and there.
Well, I was thinking on the way here about, we did the benefit for Haiti down at the Crockett Theater after that bad earthquake in Haiti.
Yeah.
And then we did the benefit for the women's shelter here in Lawrenceburg. And you were kind enough to have us on your show to kind of promote that and do a little singing. So
Yep.
I look forward to playing again.
Yeah. Now, where have you been playing lately?
Well, part of this practice that I was talking about, this spiritual practice with dancing and singing. So I've been playing all over the world.
Oh, you have, haven't you?
Yeah, and my last trip I was in Colombia, South America for a couple of weeks. That was back in April.
Okay.
And playing there. And we play music on the farm pretty much every Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Now, when you say that, what kind of music could I mean, it's, and I happen to know, but for the sake of those, it's more, I guess, what folk type
It's sort of a cross between folk music and chanting, because we sing something that you can just learn on the spot, simple words that we teach you in the moment, and then you repeat it over and over so that you get into the meditation. It's kind of like a guided meditation to music.
Interesting. Now, but I mean, I'm talking about like if you. So is that what happens on
Sundays?
On Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
At 3:00, we have a little gazebo down in the center of the community, and about 20 of us get together and do that.
Still have the farm store there?
Farm store, people from all over the area come to the farm store. It's kind of like a cross between Whole Foods and a convenience store.
Yes.
So they've got all the whole wheat flours and nuts and what I would call healthy food type items that people come there, and we don't have to drive all the way up to Cool Springs to go for that kind of shopping.
Yeah, she got the whole food type stuff there. I remember the farm.
But you can also get a Coca-Cola and a candy bar if that's what you're needing.
That's what you want. That's right. That's right. That's more of, I guess, more of my kick. Oh my gosh. Well, we've over the years had plenty of interesting conversations, and of course, you've come and you guys kind of developed your own culture there at the farm, but you haven't secluded yourself. I mean, you've been a reach out all the time, and tried to remain a part of not only the local community, but you made yourself a part of the world community.
Well, it's about outreach for sure. One of our missions of coming to the farm was, how could we make a difference? How could we influence society?
Yeah.
And we felt like we could do more from Tennessee than we could from California.
Yeah.
If anything we had to say in California, that's those crazy hippies in California. But when
That's
we came
what
to
we
Tennessee,
would say, Doug.
yeah.
That's
Well,
what
in
we would
Tennessee,
say.
it's those. What are these hippies doing in Tennessee?
Yeah, what are you doing
and so
here?
people want to know what we have to say.
Yeah.
And they say things didn't change. Well, I know I can go to Kroger's right now and buy soy milk, almond milk, tofu.
There's a lot of that.
Organic foods. And in just about every hospital, the father is there to watch the delivery of his child.
Yeah.
That was not something that was happening in the 70s. So there's a lot of ways that we've influenced the greater culture that have just been so a natural flow that people don't even notice. But, taking care of the land, the whole environmental movement, all of that came out of the hippie culture.
It did. It did. A lot of it did. It did. But you're not all good. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm just kidding. We've enjoyed talking with you, Doug. I've got a couple more minutes left. Now, next 2 weeks from today, good Lord willing, Phil will be back Doug will be back, and Phil Schweitzer, his longtime partner. Are y'all still partners in any way? Is Village Media still exist?
Yeah, roughly. We're both retired, but
Yes.
I still do website design for a few different people, and I run that through Village Media. And I've also done retreat weekends, and that was kind of like a side shoot of Village Media. And then he still does audio recording, and occasionally there'll be some video work that'll come in for somebody. We don't go out looking for anything, but there are people we still take care of.
People that know about you, that know your work, can call on you. I remember one specific. You did a video. You did some video work for Gruen Guitars a long, long time ago, and I remember this because
I got my first Martin.
And you got your first Martin. I remember you still have it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking how great that was because you went and did the video for Gruen Guitars. That was when they were still in downtown Nashville.
Right.
And I remember you telling me the story that you met, was his name Ed? Ed Gruen? Is that his name?
I think so. That's been a while. That was back
anyway, Mr.
back.
Gruen there, he basically paid you by letting you pick from the Martin guitars.
Yeah. We were making a channel called Discover Nashville that was playing in all the hotels in Nashville as a welcome to Nashville channel.
Yeah.
And we did that for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so the way it was supported was through advertisers on
Yes.
and so Gruen Guitar came on as one of the advertisers, and it was basically a trade for a guitar.
You still have it.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of keep it off to the side. I don't travel with it.
Yeah.
I just keep it at home. So I have a little Taylor now that's kind of my travel guitar.
Yeah. Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, good deal. Well, what's next for you? Where are you headed next?
Well, we're going to go, one of the things we did at the beginning of the whole COVID thing was my wife and I bought a motorhome
Oh, yeah?
so that we could travel and have our own little bubble, instead of being worried about COVID, we could just be in our own little space and travel all over the country. And we went all over the country, and we have 6 states left to visit, and they're all in New England, and we're going to go there in the fall, spend 2 months of travel in New England for the fall.
Oh, gosh. That's a trip that Teresa wants to do. Is
I'll let you know how it
a
is.
New England fall trip. Yeah.
I have some recommendations for you.
Yeah, I'll let you go first, and then you can tell us where we need to go
Yeah.
up there. See the fall foliage and all the New England states up there, and learn some American history while you're up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People ask, how do you do all this travel? YouTube. I go on YouTube, watch everything I can find about a place I want to visit, get my ideas, take notes, and
That's really a good thing to do. We took a little trip not too long ago. We were going to Atlanta, going to go to a ball game, take Daniel for his birthday, which I've talked about here on the air. But that's exactly what I did. I got on YouTube and found out about going to an Atlanta ball game, and found some dudes that had what they did and how they liked it, and found this one particular guy and talked about where he wanted to sit. Well, I zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic.
so many resources now.
Yeah, yeah. Doug Stevenson, buddy. Well, you got that on the agenda, and you and your wife still traveling and headed up to New England. So take some pictures.
You know it.
When are you leaving out?
Beginning of September. We're going to spend September and October up there.
Okay. All right. Well, good deal. Let Phil know when you talk to him.
I will.
That we're still planning on that 2 weeks.
He's
from
not
today.
off the hook.
He's not off the hook. He's not off the hook. I said earlier that he's going up to see James Taylor tonight in concert in Nashville. I played one of his songs earlier there. But Doug Stevenson, everybody from the farm, been there 50 years.
I just want to thank everybody in Lawrenceburg that's been so friendly and warm and welcoming to us all these years, and particularly you.
Love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Till next time.
All right.
See you, bud.
Peace out.